by 30 watts. So we'll go from 90 to 120, 150, 180, so on and so forth. The job for Blake is just to go for as long as he can. Okay? So it's a maximal test, so he wants to go as hard as he can go, or as long as he can go. 75% of it will be quite comfortable. The last 25% will be yelling and encouraging him, getting him to go as hard as he can there. Once he's done that, or during he's doing that, when it's sort of easy, the first 75% of the test, 15, 20 minute test, so the first 10 minutes or so, we'll just go over some stuff. It's going to be a very interactive session. So there's going to be a lot of questions and answers, right? So I'm going to be asking lots of questions about things that you've covered. So we'll go over responses, we'll go over energy systems, we'll go over fatigue mechanisms, hydrogen ions, lactate inflection point, redistribution of blood flow to start sweating. All those things which hopefully sound familiar as I'm saying them. We'll go over all that. We'll then download all the data, have a look. We're going to get his oxygen consumption, his ventilation, heart rate, stroke volume, breathing rate, all those things. Put it up on the board, have a look, and then we'll go through a thorough revision session and just tie it all together and see some real life data.
If you've got a series of hills throughout the course of a stage, if Lance is very well trained and his power at lactate threshold is very high, when he comes to the climbs, as opposed to his opponents, he's going to be, staying below this threshold, staying aerobic, burning two types of fuel, fat and carbohydrate, and still being able to clear the lactic acid that's building up. As his opponents hit these climbs and they start climbing after about 10 minutes, they're going to get above their lactate threshold. That lactate is going to start to accumulate. It's not going to burn, it's not going to clear, it's going to start accumulating. And they'll be able to tolerate it and deal with it maybe for the first climb, the second climb, but come the third climb, it's going to be eventually a limiting factor for success.
Awesome. So we're just taking some blood lactate now. So this mask is what's measuring Blake's air intake, so his ventilation. It's also measuring his breathing rate, his oxygen consumption, and we've just taken blood lactate. So blood lactate was just a small pinprick at the side of the finger. We get a droplet of blood, and that's going to tell us how much lactate is in the blood, which is obviously we know that lactic acid is a byproduct of that anaerobic system there. So that's going to start to go up as the exercise intensity increases. So we'll see heart rate go up as we go. What's his estimated max heart rate before we go any further? 202, 18? Yep, so 202, 220 minus 8, about that 202 mark. Not always the case. We're not always going to get to 202. A lot of factors play a part in that. Body size, tall, short, male, female, it's all makes a difference. But yeah, 220 minus your age is that generic equation there, which is a pretty good indicator, particularly for people under about 20 years old. Who can talk me through the energy system interplay going on? Well, what are the three energy systems, first of all? ATP-PC, first up. Anaerobic glycolysis, aerobic glycolysis. Which one do we use first? Predominantly. ATP-PC. How much, in terms of, does anyone know the yield or the rate of energy? Like how much energy do we get? Do we get quickly or slowly or intermediate? Rapid? How much is rapid? Explosively? So really, really quickly? Does anyone have a number, how much we actually get? How many ATP? 0.7. 0.7 ATP. Get it very, very quickly. How long is it dominant for? About 10 seconds. What happens after 10 seconds? I've heard decreases, I've heard depletes. Let's get that terminology spot on. If you're asked after say 15 seconds or 10 seconds, we get an increased contribution from the anaerobic glycolysis system. Does the ATP-PC system deplete? Is it still working a little bit? Yeah. So it decreases its contribution. You would have heard something along the lines of, at all stages throughout exercise, all three energy systems are contributing to energy production, but it is the duration and intensity which determine the relative contribution of each, or something along those lines. So at all times they're all working, just depends on how hard we're going and how long we're going. So the ATP-PC system will still be working, a little bit, not a lot. It still is going to be contributing to an extent. After we get to that 75 seconds, what happens in energy system interplay? An increased contribution from the aerobic glycolysis system with a decreased contribution from anaerobic glycolysis. How many ATP for the aerobic? 36, 38. Yep. anywhere it comes from. So 36 to 38 ATP, that's 18 or 19 times more than the anaerobic system, a lot more energy. Quickly or slowly? Fairly slowly. The slowest of the three, yeah? Takes quite a long time. You can't go out and sprint forever. The aerobic glycolysis system is quite a sub-maximal intensity. Very good. What are the byproducts of the anaerobic glycolysis system? So we get the energy, we get 2 ATP. Lactate nitrogen ions. Does anybody know the difference between lactic acid and, say, lactate? Bit later, guys. Can't find you. I think you're right.
Lactic acid is lactate. And
Lactic acid is broken down into lactate nitrogen. Okay? A lot of people say lactate this, lactic acid that. They use it interchangeably, but lactic acid is made up of lactate and hydrogen. Which one causes fatigue? Hydrogen. Does lactate cause fatigue? Lactate can be used as energy. How does a hydrogen ion cause fatigue? Muscle acidosis. How does that cause fatigue? You're right, that's what it does. Say again. Perfect. So hydrogen comes in, this drops outside that range, goes close to, maybe 715, 725, something like that, quite low, yeah? That inhibits glycolytic enzyme activity. If we're inhibiting glycolysis, we're not going to create energy, we're going to fatigue, and have to slow down. What are the byproducts of the aerobic glycolysis system? Heat, carbon dioxide, one more. Water and energy, yeah, a lot of 36 ATP. So fairly non-fatiguing, yeah? Carbon dioxide we breathe out, that's fine. Water's absorbed by the body, that's good. Heat's okay, as long as we can control it through sweating and other mechanisms, yeah? How do we sweat? Redistribution of blood flow. So where does it go away from? Working muscles. So away from the working muscles, goes to the surface of the skin, that then initiates sweating, that sweat then evaporates, releases heat, cools the body down. Okay. How are we going, Nick?
31.7 VO2, 156 heart rate at the moment.
156 heart rate. He's breathing in 57 litres of air. He'll get close to about 130 for his size. I don't know, 130, 150, so long way to go, mate. He's all right. Awesome. Muscular. What's the muscular acute response? Yeah, I've heard a few people. AVO2 difference. What is it?
the amount of oxygen, it's the amount of oxygen that's taken in by the muscles.
Yep.
The difference between what goes in and what goes out.
Yep, so between, well, you're absolutely right. So the difference in oxygen concentration between what and what? The arterioles and the venules, or the arteries and the veins. Arterioles are just small arteries, venules are small veins, so it's between the arterioles and the venules. Good work. Just break it down, mate. 15 seconds at a time. That's how we get started. 15 at a time. Don't worry about the full 3 minutes. 15 to the next 15 to the next 15. Doing well. You can see that we've started to walk the sweat off in here. So we know that a byproduct of the aerobic glycolysis system is heat. Yeah, we get quite a lot of heat. So that's going to increase that core body temperature. We know that to reduce that, we need to start sweating. So we redistribute the blood from the muscles to the skin to start that sweating. Breathing 110 litres of air now. Good.
You can do it!
That's the way it works.
It's like you reach level 12 in a beat test, you got to reach 15.
Good.